Thank you very much, Allie. I appreciate being invited here. One of my weekly meetings is a meeting in Boulder, Colorado. It's called the Unshakable Foundation. It's from that quote that we just read, page 98, that when prayer and meditation are interrelated with self-examination, they form an unshakable foundation for life. And so we're part of this group called Unshakable Foundation, mostly older people, because it's at 9:30 a.m. And it just so happens we don't have anything else to do. There is that great place in the book where it says some people are fortunate enough to be able to devote most of their time to this work. And I realized, yeah, that's unemployed and retired people, because they're the only ones that have time to dedicate all that time. But we do our best, right? And I retired about 1.5 years ago. And this 11th step meeting is really cool. We come in, we say hi, we introduce ourselves, and we say a prayer, and then we jump into a 20-minute quiet time. And then at the end of that, we discuss what is your 11th step practice like. And I just love that meeting. Monday, Wednesday, Friday. It's only in person in Boulder, Colorado. But if you're ever there, join us at 9:30 a.m. So my name's David Huff. I live in Broomfield, Colorado. I have been continuously sober since September 20th, 1984. So I just celebrated about a month ago my 38th anniversary. And I am here to tell you that the longer I've stayed sober, the more I become aware that I really can take no credit for my sobriety. For one thing, there's grace of God, but for another thing, there was just sheer luck. From the very beginning, I was just surrounded by people, and for whatever reason, my eyes were open, or maybe they pissed me off, but I came back later on and took a look at that. Or it moved me in a direction that changed something. How lucky is that? And so I started drinking when I was about 14 years old, and I drank until I was 31. And the last 5 years of my drinking, I went to bed almost every night, and I would say, I will not drink, I will not drink, I will not drink. The next day, I was not going to drink no matter what. I also had a list of things that I was going to do besides not drink. I was going to start running, and I would start eating better, and I'd quit smoking cigarettes. And man, I couldn't do it. I would get up the next morning, and I might go over to the grocery store because the liquor stores weren't opened yet, and start drinking at 9 o'clock in the morning. And I had a full-time job, and I had to show up for work, and my work led me to a lot of courthouses. And I mean, it was just insane behavior, and I could not stop drinking. And I was terrified because for years I would drink, and I said, well, I drink because I like how it makes me feel. I like the person I am when I drink, and I could stop if I really wanted to. And then when I really wanted to, it turned out I couldn't stop. And some days I would say, I'm not going to drink. And then I'd actually make it till lunch. And maybe I'd have a couple of beers at lunch. But you know what happens when you get a couple of beers in you? The phenomenon of craving kicks in. And now I can't stop drinking. Now I've got something on my back that demands that I take another drink. I've got an abnormal reaction to the introduction of booze in my body that makes it virtually impossible for me to stop once I start. I had no clue what was going on. I just knew that once I start drinking, you never know where I'm going to end up. And then some days I'd make it past that early morning run to the store, and some days I'd make it past lunch, and then I'd come back to the room. The work I was doing sent me out away from home, and I spent a lot of time in motels. And I'd come back to my motel room, and I'd think, geez, I made it the whole day. What's the big deal? And I'd walk down to the hotel bar, and sit down, and I'd say, you know, I'm just going to go down there to talk to somebody, meet somebody, have a conversation. It'll be fun. And I would tell the bartender, give me a glass of water, ice water. And he'd turn around and, man, the words would just pop out of my mouth. And I'd say, and bring me back a shot of whiskey with it. And it's like, what happened? Where'd that come from? I wasn't going to drink today. And so by the time I got 12-step, here's a coincidence, here's sheer luck, here's God's grace. I'd gone to Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. I was working in South Texas, and I flew up to Oklahoma City where I'd been raised to hang out with friends. Most of those friends drank pretty similar to me, used drugs pretty similar to me. And I went up there for a wild weekend, because the other side of that coin of I'm not going to drink tomorrow, I'm not going to drink tomorrow, was I would just give up. I would just say, I'm going for it, I'm going to drink. And so I'd completely dive into drinking for a couple of days or whatever. And then I'd start trying to stop again, because it was so painful to drink the way I drank. I was alienating the people that I really cared about. I was endangering people. I would say, well, at least I can not drink and drive. But as soon as I got drunk, I'd start driving, because it was too far to walk wherever I wanted to go. I mean, it was just relentless, and I absolutely could not stop. And so I go to Oklahoma City for one of these wild weekends, and I had a buddy there whose name was Ken. And Ken and I had known each other since grade school, and then my folks had moved to Colorado. I went to University of Colorado. He'd gone to University of Denver, got a degree in music, and we hooked up again. And by this time, our drinking had really progressed, and our drug use had really progressed. And we spent a lot of time getting to know each other and a lot of time using. And I used to think Ken's folks had a lot of money, and he had that got him in a lot of trouble, because it kept his bank. He had money in his bank account. And so that he never got slowed down from that angle. And I used to look at him, I think, if I ever got as bad as Ken, man, I would do something about my drinking. And Ken came over to this guy's house where I was staying on this long weekend. It was like probably September 15th, something like that. And he looks at me, it's 9 o'clock in the morning. I'm on my second or third Bloody Mary. And he says, how you doing? I said, we're really good friends. And we'd known each other a long time. And I go, oh man, I'm doing great. I'm on top of the world working for this oil company, got big deals planned. And he goes, you don't look like you're doing great. I had absolutely no intention of telling anybody what was going on inside of my head. My head was like a snake pit, you know, the thoughts rolling around in there and twirling in and out. So scary, so dark. I used to look over, at one time I had a revolver, a Colt revolver, and I would look at it occasionally and I would think, don't look at that thing, don't look at that thing. The thoughts inside my head, I wanted out. Alcohol and drugs weren't doing it. So there we are. Ken says to me, you don't look like you're doing well. And it just spilled out of my mouth. I'm not, and I don't know what's going on. And Ken, who, if I ever got as bad as Ken, I'd stop drinking, started telling me the story of how he got sober. He was 90 days sober. And he told me this story, and it was absolutely mind-blowing. Everything he'd gone through, I was going through. And he said, David, look, there's a way out. There's a way out that will work for you. It's Alcoholics Anonymous. And I said, well, what about all the drugs? And he goes, don't worry about all the drugs. Alcoholics Anonymous has got a solution. And our book says that we have a way out on which we can absolutely agree and join in brotherly and harmonious action. And I wanted so badly. And what he had going on for him was he appeared to be happy, joyous, and free, sober. And 2 days later, I was in Victoria, Texas, where I was working for this oil company, staying in a Holiday Inn out there. And I called up AA. He told me if you dial the phone number, they'll be in the phone book and you can find a meeting. This is 1984, man. It's hard to get in touch with people. You guys know what phone books are? Well, anyway, they had these things, big things full of paper, and you could find numbers, and they had Alcoholics Anonymous in there. And I called Alcoholics Anonymous. I disguised my voice because I thought, I don't want anybody knowing what if this thing doesn't work? I don't want anybody hounding me. I had no idea what was going on, but I showed up at my first meeting and I heard these guys share. I mean, all this stuff is just luck. How'd this stuff happen? I just absolutely can't believe it. And I walk in and I hear this guy, I hear these three guys share. All of them are about my age. And all of them had around 5 years of sobriety. One had flipped a truck and killed his nephew and gotten sober in prison on vehicular homicide. And the other two had crazy, wild stories, all the stuff they'd lost, where their drinking had taken them. My drinking hadn't taken me to some of those places from the outside, but on the inside, man, I was a wreck. I was emotionally distraught. I had no connection to this power greater than myself. But what I heard was not, you're different from them. What I heard was, if you keep drinking, all this stuff's in store for you. And I believed them, and I could see in their eyes that they had found a way out. So I get sober and I never take another drink of alcohol again. That's September 17th, 1984. 2 days later, I shot a load of heroin and I asked a guy to sponsor me. I said, you got to help me. I tried to kill myself tonight. I didn't know I was trying to kill myself, but afterwards I said, you're out of your mind. You thought you could stay sober as long as if you shot heroin and didn't drink booze. And I realized, you're insane. You need help. And so I asked this old guy to sponsor me, and he sponsored me, and that began my journey. This place in Victoria, Texas, I kept running into these guys. They were so alive. They had this spiritual life. They were recommending all these great books for me. And so I dove in, and I was really happy to be a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. But it was 2 years before I ever started working steps. And I didn't understand that the big book Alcoholics Anonymous is a manual. I like to call it a manual for the advancement of our souls, but I have to follow the directions. And if you had asked me back then in 1986, if you worked the steps, I would have told you, yeah, because I go into all these meetings and they're posted right up on the wall, and I've read it probably hundreds of times by now. So yeah, I've worked the steps. But this group of people at Happy Way in Denver, these guys were real heavy hitters. They were by the book Alcoholics Anonymous. You work the steps, and we don't really care what your opinion is about it. We only care about your experience. And so I went through the steps with one of these guys, and things began to change. I had that promised awakening that we heard read from Appendix 2, Spiritual Experience. I had a personality change sufficient to bring about recovery from alcoholism. I was sponsored by these really great people, luck. 5 years sober, I went to work for a guy. He said, if you stay here for 1 year, now I was 4 years sober. If you stay here for 1 year, I'll get you trained in transcendental meditation. That's a form of silent meditation. You meditate twice a day, 20 minutes. So I've been doing that for 34 years. Twice a day, 20 minutes each time. Luck. How can you make this stuff up, right? And even with all of that stuff going on, I'm still separated from this power. At 5 years sober, I get thrown in jail for assaulting my wife. And I know that something's wrong with me. You know, in our inventory in step 4, Bill Wilson says, bottles are just a symptom. What's wrong? The bottles are out of the picture and I'm still a maniac. And I'm sponsoring all these guys and I'm taking them through the steps, and it's just crazy. And so they're calling me up. Well, I see you tonight at your house. I was leading a big book study, and I go, no, I'm in jail, right? And this is what I've got. And so I want to tell you that assault, me and that gal just will celebrate 35 years. of being married next month in November. You cannot make this stuff up. With men, these things are not possible, but with God, all things are possible. And what happened was I had to address that. And Bill Wilson talks about that also. He says there's many good doctors and therapists, and you can go to them. They give of themselves. And I found some help around that angry temper. And we have a wonderful life and a great marriage. We have 2 children, 31 and 33. They've never seen us drink. We've both been sober longer than they've been alive. We got a beautiful cat that lives with us. And I'm a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. I sponsor people. I have a sponsor. He knows he's my sponsor. About 10 years ago, he told me, I think it'd be a good idea if we start working the steps every year. And I'd learned not to argue with this guy. And my thought is, Mickey, do you know who I am? I mean, I'm leading the big book workshops and I'm doing this and I'm doing all that. But what I said was, yeah, that sounds like a good idea, Mick. And we just started doing it. We do it around my birthday. I talked with him on Monday. We did steps 10 and 11. Okay, so I got you up here and I'm going to go ahead and actually talk about step 11. So Mickey became my sponsor almost 30 years ago. One of the first things we did, we had a little meeting. He said, where do you stand with the 11th step? And I was telling him, well, Mickey, I'm reading this book. There's a book from early Christian mystical writing called The Cloud of Unknowing. My degree from college, University of Colorado, was philosophy and religious studies. And so I had this idea, but here's the thing, you can't think your way out of alcoholism, and you can't think your way into a relationship with this power greater than yourself. This is about an experience. It's not about thinking about an experience. And so Mickey just looked at me kind of horrified, and he goes, how about if you actually just use the directions in the big book? What if you did that? What if you did that nightly review every night? Starts off with, when we retire at night, we constructively review our day. Well, why would I want to do that every night? And so what I said was, okay. And what I did was I went home, I typed up all those questions because I had a brand new computer back then and whatever it was, 1986, printed that thing out, put it by the bed, and never read it. And the other thing he'd asked me to do was to get kind of serious and consistent about step 10, this self-examination process. And that was another one I didn't do. I couldn't find the right book to write in. It wasn't the right time of year. I couldn't, whatever. I had all kinds of excuses for not doing a 10th step. Continue to watch for selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, and fear. When these things crop up, we ask God to remove them at once. We talk with someone immediately. I've done my 5th step, man. I ain't talking to nobody about nothing. Yeah, that's a great way to die sober. Killing yourself, don't talk about this stuff. Go to a meeting, only talk about the good things that are going on in your life. Don't share, don't let anybody know what's really going on. It's a great way to die miserable. So anyway, Mickey's suggesting these things, and it takes me years. Then a number of years ago, my wife and I go down to Santa Fe, New Mexico to do a big book. Well, it was a back to basics step workshop in Santa Fe, New Mexico with Tom's group, Tom Yu's group. And as a gift, those people gave me this book, and the book was full of 185. Whoa, how long was I muted?
This book was full of 185 pages.
Oh, yeah. Oh, very good. Thank you for the note. Book's got 185 pages. Every single page has those 12 or 13 questions from the nightly review. And I thought, oh my God, my sponsor's been telling me, other people are telling me they're getting tremendous results from actually doing this stuff. What if I started doing this nightly review every single night? And some of the other questions that ask you is, what could you have done better? And that answer is almost always the same for me. Trust and rely on infinite God rather than finite self. I'm always getting in there trying to fix, manage, and control stuff. It ain't about fix, manage, and control. It's about how much can I surrender. I've come to realize just in man, this process of self-examination, interrelated and with prayer and meditation, is so unbelievably powerful. I mean, and mystics and Christians and Muslims and have been practicing this stuff, and they're elevated to a new level. And we've got these writings here in the big book, Alcoholics Anonymous, telling, listen, man, you're about to be awakened, and you can have multiple awakenings. I ran across this quote from Bill Wilson in As Bill Sees It. It's on page 8. This is unbelievable. He's asked this question: Bill, is the only thing that is to be expected of the awakening sobriety? And his answer is no. Sobriety is just the first gift of the first awakening. In order to receive the other gifts, we must continue to work. Holy cow, that Mickey's a genius. Tells me 10 years ago, we're going to start working the steps every year. I get it. The stated result of working the 12 steps is having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps. Nowhere in that book do I find one and done. Work them once and then live in 10, 11, and 12. I tried that. I can't stay there in 10, 11, and 12. I get sidetracked. But this deal of actually going back and doing it is really, really helpful for me. So I've now kind of come to believe this. You know, early on, first time we go through the book, we come to this line that says, he is either everything or he is nothing. What is our choice to be? And it's like, what are they even talking about, right? What does that mean? Oh, listen, I got to put a pin in this right here, because I've got to tell you, everything I do, this is not I'm not trying to create a to-do list for anybody else. This is what worked for me. And I got here by not doing all this stuff. Just like I got to Alcoholics Anonymous by not quitting drinking. I needed every single drink to get me here. And apparently I needed all that obstinacy. You know, there's a great line in the 12 and 12 that says, when we start doing step 6 and 7, rebellion dogs our every step at first. That was me. Rebellion dogs me. It just won't let me go. It's like, no, if you suggest it, I don't want to do it. I mean, it's just so sad. I have all these beautiful friends. They really love me. They care about me. They send me all this material that I should read for the edification of my soul. And my first reaction, even now, 38 years sober, multiple spiritual awakenings, rocketed into the 4th dimension of existence. I mean, all this stuff's real. This is, and it's not hyperbole. It's understatement if it's anything. And with all that stuff going on, they send me these books. And my first reaction is, what do I need your opinion for? You know? Well, because their opinion has saved my life on multiple occasions. So the only point of all that is, I didn't arrive here overnight. And I didn't arrive here in the first 5 years. I'm telling you, I was the guy sitting down in the jail cell going, as soon as I get out of here, I'm going to go drink. But that was an awakening for me, because sitting in that jail cell, right after I said that, I said, you are insane. And from that moment on, I never had entertained a serious thought of alcohol. I saw the insanity of alcoholism. So anyway, so I start practicing this step 10, this self-examination. Then I decide to get serious about step 11. And isn't it interesting that step 11 starts with kind of a form of self-examination? When we retire at night, we constructively review our day. Were we selfish? Were we dishonest? Were we resentful? Were we afraid? Hey, that sounds like self-examination. Later on in the 12 and 12, Bill says, all people of spiritual growth practice unsparing self-examination. Bill learned something from 1939 to 1953, some amazing stuff. So I realized, let's see, I'm kind of circling around, aren't I, to, what time did I get started here? 6? Okay. I want to read this quote in its entirety that was on the flyer. And thank you so much, Allie, for for doing that for me. But it goes like this. It's on page 98. There is a direct linkage among self-examination, meditation, and prayer. Taken separately, these practices can bring much relief and benefit. But when they are logically related and interwoven, the result is an unshakable foundation for life. Man, how does that sound? How about an unshakable foundation for life? No matter what the situation, condition, or person in your life that looks like your problem. I had this revelation about a year ago. Every problem in AA has the same solution: God. What are you talking about? I don't have the car I want. God. The stock market's falling down. I'm not going to be able to retire. God. God's the answer to every problem we have here in AA. And so I need an unshakable foundation, because if I get rocked at the level of self-esteem, security, ambitions, personal or sex relations, I'm going to react selfish, dishonest, resentful, and afraid. And so this stuff begins to go together and work together. Here's what happens. This has been my experience. I don't know if it happens to everybody. I start getting real serious about doing this writing, this nightly review. I get that book from Tom Ewell, and I start writing it. And I love it so much that I start showing it to other guys that I'm sponsoring. And now we're ordering them by the case, so we can hand them out to the guys we sponsor. And every year, in fact, it's this weekend, we do a 10, 11, and 12-step retreat for men. And we go through all this stuff and we hand out these books. And man, people are getting on fire about this thing really works. You want to be rocketed into the fourth dimension. Forget about drinking. Forget about the problems that you have. We've been placed in a position of neutrality. That's the promise of the 10th step. We've been placed in a position of neutrality, safe and protected. Wow. So you mean when the stock market goes down and there goes my retirement fund? Yeah, that one. And when my wife gets mad at me and it looks like we might be splitting up after 32 years, yeah, that one. Position of neutrality. That's all right, God. I'm just here to do what you want me to do. And then they tell us in step 10, well, then how am I supposed to act? Pretty simple. Love and tolerance of others is our code. That's what they tell us at the end of the 10th step. And then, this is so cool. In the 11th step nightly review, they ask you a question, which is basically, hey, are you living by the code? There's a question in the nightly review that says, were you loving and kind towards all? And it's like, oh my God, they caught me. I was supposed to be living this code of love and tolerance of others. So I begin to see how all this stuff comes together. Okay, here's the rest of this. The results, this unshakable foundation for life. That's what I need. What happens is we take these problems, we take these, the way we act, and not to kick our own butt, but to see it in the clear light of truth. And then when we meditate, we begin to realize, oh my gosh, all this stuff, all this misery I create myself is about thinking. And just because I thought it doesn't mean I got to do anything about it. It doesn't mean I got to believe it. Wow, unbelievable. There's a promise in the 10th step. We cease the deliberate manufacture of misery. But if you're not practicing self-examination, prayer, and meditation, you're continuing to generate your own misery by thinking about yourself all the time. Now and then we may be granted a glimpse of the ultimate reality, which is God's kingdom. You practice self-examination, prayer, and meditation, they're telling you you're very liable to get a glimpse of the ultimate reality. And we will be comforted and assured that our destiny in that realm will be secure so long as we try, however falteringly, to find and do the will of our Creator. We don't even have to do it. We don't have to get it perfect. Speaking of get it perfect, this is a great thing that Bill Wilson did in the 12 and 12. And listen, I'm a big book guy. When I sponsor somebody, we go through the big book because that's where the directions are. But Bill Wilson learned some stuff between 1939 and 1923. He was hanging around some amazing people. And one of the things that he does is he says, listen, when you're doing all this inventory, catch yourself doing stuff right. An accounting ledger isn't just red ink, he says. There's black ink in there too. Find your credits, not just the debits. And it's like, brilliant. You know, all this positive psychology and these guys that will coach you. That's what they're saying now. Start catching yourself doing parenting classes. I'll tell you, catch your kids doing stuff right. It's easy to catch them doing stuff wrong. But why don't we apply that to ourselves? Catch ourselves doing stuff right. See how that changes your life, your vision of what's going on. So anyway, I get a little wrapped up around this stuff, but I'm just so in love with it. And what I'll say is keep doing what you're doing until you can't do it anymore, or jump in and give it a try. See what happens. Could it be true? Could this really be true, what he's saying here, that we can form this unshakable foundation in partnership with this great reality? And that's the last thing I'll say. One of the very first things that really caught my attention is on page 55, and it's that place where Bill Wilson, and this is early in the book, man, but it's on page 55 where Bill Wilson tells us where we find this power. We want to improve our conscious contact. Where do we find that power? How do I improve that conscious contact? And what Bill says is sometimes we had to search fearlessly, but he was there. We found the great reality deep down within us. What? The great reality deep down. Search fearlessly for the great reality deep down within you. I was always looking outside of me to fix what wasn't okay inside of me. I was looking in booze and drugs and women and prestige and having a great job and a great title. And then when I came into AA, because I didn't understand what they meant by find the great reality deep down within, an unsuspected inner resource, like we read about that spiritual experience, it's inside me. What I had been looking outside of me to fix what wasn't okay, I don't even need to be fixed anymore because I've found that power great deep down within. Does that mean I don't make mistakes? No. Does that mean I don't have to make amends? No. I still keep showing up because I still get thrown off track. I forget who I am. But this program, I've become such a believer. It has everything I ever need to find what I've always been looking for, which is contact with this power. And so I'll sign off, and I really thank you for letting me go on and on.